the number one killer on U-joint bellows is barnacles.
Barnacles?
If you get barnacles, imagine every time you turn, the barnacle cuts a little bit, cuts a little bit, cuts a little bit.
Barnacles can get in there?
Not in there, on the outside. Because this is in the outside of the boat. You see the bellows there, they sometimes dry rot.
Okay.
Or they'll get barnacles in between there, so every time you trim it up, trim it down, that's why the motors should always be trimmed down. A customer that has a stern drive should never have the motor trimmed up in the water, because what happens is now it's like this, barnacles grow on it, and as soon as he trims it down, it cuts it. And also, not only that, if he trims it up, these rams will grow barnacles on this as well, causing that every time you bring the motor down, the barnacles will cut that seal and wipe out the caps on the rams. Same thing as your trim tabs on your boat. They should never be down when you're just sitting in the water. They should be up, because the moment you need to use them, if the brew barnacles and you go up, it's going to eat the seals and you're going to damage the seal.
Oh, Danny, this is a great recommendation. Can you repeat that? Never?
Never have the motors trimmed up when it's in the water. You risk the chance of building barnacles on the rams themselves and on the bellows. But when you trim this down, if there's any barnacles here, it'll cut the seal in here, causing to leak. And then you'll have a hard time getting the motor up and down. Okay? So it should always be down. And then not only that, it protects your bellows, because you're stretching the bellows, and then what happens, the barnacle grows there. As soon as you trim it down, it's strong, but it's not. Over a period of time, they get brittle. It's like anything else. So that's another way. Now, what's another way that you can get water in the gimbal bearing if the bellows is not leaking? So you go to a customer's house and you hear rumbling, so man, you're like, I don't know if it's the gimbal bearing or if it's the drive. If you turn the wheel hard to one direction and it gets louder, it's definitely the gimbal bearing. Think about it, because if that shaft's in a donut and the bearing's all the way around it, and if you turn it, you're putting pressure more on one side because you turned it hard to one, and then you hear it go.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you're like, and then you go back to the middle and it goes. And you turn it the other way. You know it's the gimbal. Okay, you can hear it.
It's basically,
and that's something you just got to hear it, and you'll be like, oh,
it's with the sound.
Yeah, because sometimes I go into customers' boat and say, oh, you need a gimbal bearing. How do you know? Turn the wheel hard. Got louder. That's it. I didn't even have to break out a tool. That's why, man, listening, smelling, seeing. I keep telling you guys every class, it's your senses that plays a part of everything. You're gonna just be in tune with everything. So you're listening, and once you experience it, then you're like, oh, you won't forget. You're like, oh yeah, the gimbal bearing's bad. So those are the things that cause that. Now, stern drives sucks to work on, but it's great to work on, because no one wants to work on them, so I can charge a lot of money to work on them. Okay, so stern drives are more maintenance. If you notice, the boats today now are getting more outboards, the bigger boats. Before, no one really did that. You would have triples, quads, whatever, but then most people wanted inboards. But the inboards require a lot more maintenance. You got risers and manifolds to worry about. You got the drive to worry about. You got the transom assembly to worry about. There's a lot of stuff to worry about. A lot more maintenance required.
What's becoming more common, is that?
Outboards on the big boats. Yeah, look at the Scouts. 50, 60 footers now are having outboards.
HCVs.
Yeah, HCVs, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the difference. So now on this here, I know you don't know yet, but we understand about Bravo and Alpha, right? What's the difference between Alpha and Bravo?
The cooling system.
The pump.
Where's the cooling system on the Bravo?
The Bravo is inside, the Alpha is
Inside
outside.
the boat, and the Alpha is on the
It's
outside.
outside.
So to understand, so you have to, when you talk to a customer, and you have customers that have no clue what they got, they just know it's a boat. You say, well, you have a Merc Cruiser? Yeah, you got a Merc Cruiser. Is it a Bravo or Alpha? I have no idea. Okay. So then you gotta wait until you get there. But in any case, you come here, hey, it's an Alpha. So in order to pull, okay, so let me just go this. The Alpha shifting system is just like an outboard. It's all in the lower unit. On a Bravo, it's just like a transmission. It has a transmission up here, and then it shifts only up here, and basically the bottom part is actually almost a differential. Okay, that's the difference, and that's why I put some of these lower unit stuff that I cut up from my shop, so we can kind of take a look at it. Any questions to this point? So when you're taking an Alpha out, because it shifts like a lower unit, you have to put it in forward to take the drive out. On a Bravo, you don't. The Bravo, you can be in neutral. The only difference is when you pull it out, you've seen in the video, there's like a little a little clip that holds the cable, so you can only pull it out so far, lift the lip, and then it pops right
Yeah,
out.
we did a video with that explanation.
Okay, and so as far as on the Alpha, so once you take the drive out, obviously you're ready to service it. The water pump, that means you have to split the drive. So a water pump job on an Alpha is a little bit more money than a Bravo, because the Bravo, well, depending on where the water pump is on the Bravo, but for the most part, you're looking at 2.5 hours to do a service on a water pump. And unfortunately, this one you have to change the gear oil because there's a split. You're going to see that when we start doing it, it splits, and there's an O-ring that allows the oil to come from the top to the bottom, or there's a reservoir in the boat. So when you're putting oil in this gear case or the drive, where do you put it, from the top or from the bottom? From the bottom. Why?
Because you open the vent on the top and you let it fill until it comes out.
Right.
That's correct.
Because if you filled it from the top, how's the air going to get out? Right? So the rule of thumb is...
We are going to do that
Yeah, you guys are
laboratory.
going to do it, and you're going to vacuum and pressure test the gear cases. So when you're filling it, you obviously, I always tell everybody, leave that top screw in, unscrew the bottom one. It's going to drip a little bit, but remember, there's suction because there's no air getting in. So what I'll end up doing is putting my tool in there to fill it up, let's just say, or take a drain it, and then once I have my drain pan there, open it, let it drain out. Then when you fill it from the bottom, leave this open, and you let it fill until it oozes out. Once it oozes out, you let it sit 10 seconds, just to let bolt, and then I open it, crack it a little bit more just to see a perfect flow coming out, and then I stop. And then I put the top back in, right? Why would I put the top back in, or can I just take out the bottom one?
Hold the pressure.
Yeah, to hold the pressure, because if I took the bottom out and I didn't put the top in, all the shit's gonna go just right out. So this one here, you put the top back in, then you pop out the tool. When you pop out the tool, it's okay. A little bit leaks out. It's normal. Remember, these gear cases are not filled up completely to the top. Why?
Expansion.
Because of the expansion.
Yeah,
exactly.
expansion.
So when you're running the gears and you got pressure, it's expanding. That oil has to have a place to go. Okay. On the newer Everoos, they actually have an expansion tank for the gear cases, which is nice. Everoos was the only one that came up with it. That now you can check if you have water in your gear case. It's just by looking at that reservoir instead of having to drain it and checking it. Okay. Now you have a customer that says, "Hey man, my motor's locked up." Okay. You go, you look, nothing's obvious. What should you do at that point if you see nothing that's obvious? Well, if this is locked up, will the engine be locked up?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Why? Because it's connected directly into the coupler. Here we go again. Isolation. Is the problem in the motor, or is the problem on the drive? Okay, so then I pull this out. Boom, the engine fires up. Oh, problem's in there. Or what I would have done, instead of pulling the drive out, I would have drained the gear oil, and maybe I see the gear oil is like just bunch of metal, then you know. Or it might not be the metal, because if that gimbal bearing locks up inside this housing that you just saw over there, will also give you a locked up problem. The motor will look like it's locked up, and it's not. It's actually the gimbal bearing. That's why you still should pull it out. But if I saw oil, like a lot of metal, no oil, I would have probably said yeah. Either way, it has to come out, because in order to rebuild this, you have to pull it out anyways. And plus, you're going to charge the customer, because you got to tell the customer, hey, this is part of the process. You got to check it. Okay? Because if you have a locked up bearing, you got to understand, why do I have a locked up bearing? Okay, where the water come in? Okay, the water came in. Shit. If I look in the boat, as much as anybody cleans the boat that partially sank, you can never make it go away 100%. There's always visible signs. Because no one's going to go in that really back far corner to go look to see if there's any. They just look at it. They just clean what you can see. So if you've seen there was at one point in time there was a lot of water, then you know, okay, that water came in through here. But if it's like, let's just say this guy, like this particular guy, this was out of a bayliner, and this engine got watered because of the rising manifold. But the problem was the motor. But let's just say the problem's in the transfer assembly. Well, okay, where did the water come from? Hey, the bell's not leaking, but okay, you had high water. But then, since I'm already there, I already pulled out, I already did the labor to pull it out, and I look at the bellows and it's questionable, then I'd say, you also need bellows. Probably would just tell him right out, you need bellows. The bellows is your problem. Even though I know he got water in the boat. But he could have got water in the boat. Can you sink a boat if you have bad bellows? Absolutely, dude. The water is gonna roll in here. It'll roll right inside, and you can hear it trickling with the engine off. You can't really see it. In some cases, guys, this is so close that you have the floor, and the hatch starts from here. and you really sometimes can't stick your head in there, or maybe you can go in the side, you know, try to look for it. But if you can't see it, you know, you're just gonna shut the engine off and you can hear it leaking a little bit. And then you know, okay, the bellows is leaking. Like that one video him and I did, we troubleshoot. Actually, that was that one that we did in the video is this motor that was locked up.
Yeah, I remember.
And then he had to get another motor, raise the manifold. He had to reseal the drive, and plus the flapper. I don't know that you guys seen that video. That we actually found the flapper stuck in the white pipe. It was like the home run of home runs of troubleshooting. I mean, you couldn't ask for any more problems in one
That
boat.
was a great video.
It was really, and we had no clue. We just complained it overheating, and after we replaced the engine, he complained overheating. And that's how we found that. But in any case, so obviously forward gear comes out. So here's the deal. I have a stand, but before I had a stand, I did everything by hand. So first thing that I would do is take these off, right? Loosen this up so I can spread them and either drop them to the ground or hold them up by a rope. And then what I would do is, this isn't forward, you got 5/8, you got 6 5/8 bolts, okay? You pop that out, and then normally you can jerk it like this, it'll break the seal right here, okay? And if it breaks the seal, now sometimes don't do it, because maybe that guy, this is the first time customer and he's never pulled his drive out. How could I get this out if it won't come out? Think about it. This is hydraulics, lifting this up and going down. So you have the hydraulics on. What could you
Put
do?
a wood block between.
There you go. You can actually put a piece of wood between here and here, hook up the ram, and trim it up, and with the pressure, once it breaks free, you can get it out. It's like I always tell everybody, if I can get it to move a little bit, I can get it out. If I can't get it to move, it's gonna snap. So you lift that up, it pops off, you trim it back down, now you can wiggle it and get it out.
That's not a
Some
one-man
cases,
job, right?
I've had wood that crushed the wood, and then I have to get a forklift, and I got and that time I call the customer, yo, dude, here's the problem. I'm gonna break something getting this out. I don't know what I'm gonna break until I break it. This is the way it is. And I tied stuff to it, and I take the ram, I have the forklift tied up with a chain, and I got a monster 10-pound slide hammer, and I'm going, wah-bah, wah-bah. And sometimes they won't come out. And so I gotta hook up the boat to the truck, and then I hook it up to the forklift, and I do a running start, and then say, whatever happens, happens, because I can't get it out. But you gotta tell the customer, you can't just do that without telling them. And you explain to them, you may need a new transom or something by the time you've done it, but if I don't get it out, I can't fix it, right? So as long as you explain to customers that before you do it, don't destroy your ship and then tell them later. You tell them, I'm gonna destroy your stuff because someone they weren't supposed to do, they did something they didn't do what they were supposed to do, or you just don't take care of your shit and now you want me to fix it. Okay, so it's kind of like one of those deals. On the Bravos, it's heavy. Alpha's not heavy. Bravos are heavy. Bravos are pretty interesting because the transmission is the front and the top, and the lower unit is just like a transfer case in your car. You have dual prop, single prop, okay? Alphas only come in single prop. And the shifting mechanism on the Alpha is where? In the lower unit. And the Bravo is on top. Okay? So just imagine like that transmission that we were looking at, that blue one, just mounted on top of a transfer case. And that makes it work. So yeah, go all the way up real quick. I want to show them something. So imagine, that's good. So imagine this guy leaves it in the water, and the water's sitting, you know, as much as I'll drive. Those seals in here get wiped out. Also, if you're trying to get things out, and this is common sense, but I see people do it all the time, they're like, oh man, I can't get these out. And then they take a pry bar and they're prying against this. Well, guess what? When you nick this, every time it goes through the seal, what do you think it's gonna do? Eat it. Same thing as your hydraulic steering. If you're doing hydraulic steering, you gotta protect this part like it was gold.
Yeah.
Because the moment you gouge this, oh, I see them do some sandpaper. Yeah, it won't leak right away, but it's gonna leak. And then again, someone like me will come, and I'm like, dude, someone damaged your, this, you need a whole new RAM system. What? Look. So you gotta prove. It's always easy to blame someone else, but you say, look, this is what makes you different from everybody else. Look. I don't know who did it, but someone guys, and the guy's because the guy probably didn't know. Either he did it himself, or he was watching someone do it and he just figured it was not going to hurt anything. And then when you explain to him why, then he's like, oh, yeah, okay. All right, got to do it. Got to replace it. This is what it is. And the steering is so important because, and these rams are so important. I'm like telling you, barnacles, don't paint it. If you're going to paint, like you see paint over here in the little section because it only goes in so far. But if you're going to paint it, put tape around it, protect it. I like to put grease, especially on the outboard ones with the trimming going up and down. I like to put grease around the cap, only because I'm trying to avoid letting salt accumulate in there. It's part of the service. You should just lube everything. I put grease on everything.
Lithium grease.
Yeah, lithium grease. The 2+4 from Evan is probably the best grease.
Yeah, that's true.
And then Mercury makes that green lithium grease, but it's like freaking super expensive.
It's too expensive, yeah.
But it's great grease, okay? But that's how with this stern drive. So basically the trim system on this is basically on the drive. It's controlled by the drive. The steering system is controlled by the drive as well because there's an arm that attaches to your... Why would I have hydraulic steering and cable? Why do I have hydraulic cable steering with a hydraulic ram? What's the purpose of that?
This scenario is cable with hydraulic.
What happens when your car's off and you try to turn that wheel? Well, at least my car. Power steering is only an assist. Okay? So if you go to a customer's house and the steering is hard, first you gotta make sure the power steering is working. Or sometimes, again, this is in a wet environment where the shaft comes in and out like it's coming in and out right now, salt builds up and it binds. Same thing on an outboard. On an outboard, you have this steering tube coming in, the cable going through the steering cable, and the guy who doesn't use the boat who gets the worst part of it is because it water evaporates, salt crystallizes, and it binds, and then the shaft is stiff. Or the steering point, pivot point on the outboard, which we'll go more in detail as we go on, the bushings are packed with salt, or because of the grease. Okay, so here's the deal. Every time we do a service, we grease the grease fins. What happens is every time you put grease in there, you're just adding grease and really cleaning the old grease out. The grease shares the same fate as like salt buildup there. Salt, water gets in the grease, the water evaporates, the salt crystallizes, it leaves nothing but salt, and then that's like getting mud now. Now it's not grease anymore, now it becomes more solid. I got one there at the shop now. There's two options. The easy option was the one I hope it works. I just heat up the steering tube and move it back and forth and just let it melt whatever's grease that's in there, get it hot enough that the grease melts and just falls out, and then repack it. Or I gotta pull the power head, the lower unit, the whole midsection apart, and it turns into like a 10-hour job to make the steering right again. I got a 90% success rate with the heating, but providing that the customer uses both, because if I fix it and he lets it sit for another year, then I can't help him. Then he's got to go the other route, but he's going to share the same fate every time. Okay. So on the steering here, there's a couple things since we're talking about the stern drive. On the steering, right now, there's no play. Sometimes you'll have a customer. He says, "Man, I'm constantly compensating. Because the arm where the steering hooks up to, okay, it goes into, there's a steering rod that comes in and it's squared, okay, and it has a nut that goes on top of it. To change that, there's a couple ways to do it. One, you pull the motor out, or if you have access, or they sell these kits that you take a hole saw and you make a hole here and you can pop it off, but it's not easy. Okay, that's one option. And also water can leak from there because there's a seal, because obviously the housing is coming through here. Oh, actually here, we have this here so you can see it better. See the steering here. Imagine trying to take that nut off on that one there.
Which one?
That nut for the steering.
Yeah.
So they have an adapter that you can make holes, or you pull the motor out and you can do it, address it. But what happens is these become loose, and so what happens is you can take the drive. That's why I shook that one. I don't know if it had it, but it didn't have a problem. You can move the drive moves like probably that much in either direction. So then the guy's constantly going like this, like this, like this, because the boat won't track straight. Because what happens is when the engine's running, if it's a standard rotation, it always wants to pull to which side? To the right side. So then you're always compensating, and it's just those are things just to think about, and you should check. When you do the service, move the drive, solid. Okay, this is the way it's supposed to be. There should be no play whatsoever. Okay. Now this one here is a Bravo system here. When you see this size cable with Broward and a Bravo, you see the little clip that comes over this. Okay, you've seen that in the video. On this Alpha, when you take it apart, it's a little bit different, and I'll explain to you when we pull that off. Each one of you, I'll do that each individually. When you pull out, why it has to be in forward, because the shift linkage on the forward one. Let me see if I have one. Now there's a gasket that goes here, and that's gaskets to not allow water into the system. Okay, so just to go a little more in detail on this, if you look, okay, you have a hose for your pickup, right? See right here, the hose for the pickup right there.
You see that hose, guys?
That's what they call the S hose, okay? And the reason they call it an S hose because it's literally like an S. It's going up like this and then into that. That's why they call it the S hose.
It's clogged easily, no?
Oh, they get clogged up, and not only that, no one ever changes them. They dry rot. And so what would be a symptom if it was dry rotted? What symptom would I see?
Overheating at high speed
Why?
because the drive's out of the water.
Correct.
Go.
That's correct.
So a low speed it doesn't overheat, but a high speed. Okay, so then here you go again. Question to the customer: when's the last time you changed your water pump? Oh, I just recently did it because I had an overheat problem and it won't go away. But when's your last time you replaced the riser manifold? Why am I asking you question? Because the riser manifold allows water to what? Exit the motor. So if there's a restriction there, it'll overheat as well. Am I overheating? Are you overheating at high speed or low speed? Only at high speed, man. At low speed, I can go all day long at low speed. At high speed, I have the overheat issue. Okay. All right, sir, let's bring the boat in. So right away, first inspection, trim the motor up like we did there. Let's actually just do it.
Danny, I have a question before
Yeah.
you go over there. This hose, the S hose, is because this is a Bravo unit, no?
Yeah, they both have S hose.
Correct. And the raw water pump is on the engine inside, and you suction the water because the grill is in the lower unit.
Like that one right there. Here's a Bravo right here.
That's the grill. That's the grill.
Here's the pickup. So this, you're right. So that S hose is on the suction side on a Bravo.
Correct.
And then on an Alpha, it would be pressurized.
Correct.
Because the water pump is where? In the lower down there. So if the water's here, it's under pressure. And in a Bravo, it's on suction.
Correct. And I have a question. If I want to eliminate that system and I put a through hole inside, close to the engine with a C-cock valve, I eliminate that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I talked to you guys previously in classes that would be the best route because if
You
not,
understand,
have to
guys?
pull the motor out, and it's no different, providing that you locate the C-cock in the right direction, in the right proper position. Not only that, in the proper location, because you don't want to create. Because if you have the C-cock in line with the drive, what is it going to cause? Cavitation. But really ventilation, because it's getting the bubbles, and you don't have solid water, and then you'll start overheating. But those are, see, by that question like that I just said is like, hey, I'm only overheating at high speed. Now in your brain that you have this, you're like, okay, well the S hose could be a cause of the water pump, it could be a thermostat, it could be an exhaust manifold. Every time you think of like the cooling system, your mind should automatically water pickup, strainer, water pump, circulating pump, thermostats, exhaust. It's a lot. If you really think there's a lot to it, but it's not a lot. It's pretty simple, but if you follow the flow, the questions that you ask will help you as well. Same thing on an outboard. If the guy has an Alpha, and he says, hey, it only overheats at high speed. Well, if you damage the gasket putting it in, or maybe there's a crack in the housing and they suck in air because that's under pressure. You can see it more on the suction side because it's like your straw. You poke a hole in your straw and you're trying to suck whatever liquid you're trying to suck up. You won't. It's not the same as if it didn't have a hole. But on pressure side, you say, well, I would make that much. Well, you're losing pressure because on the engine it has to have a certain amount of PSIs for it to absorb the heat for the water flow through the engine. So that's why it's important to ask those questions. The most common problem on Alphas, I would say, is water pumps because it's just like a lower unit. If someone runs through the sand, it's just like an outboard. On the Bravo, it's not so bad, and it could be, but for the most part, it gets caught up in the No, the oil cooler, or the strainer if it's through the through hole. Through hole is the way to go. I don't know why they even bother doing this, because the old system was worse. As I showed you, they shrunk that hole up. Now that they changed that, so it only took them 30 years to figure that out, but they figured it out. But in any case, you have that ability, so you just understand the water. And this one has a dual water pickup. This is a newer style, because you have a secondary pickup. Okay, you gotta be careful when you're running these engines on a hose, and you have to block off that secondary pickup. Why?
So it's sucking air.
Yeah, because it's sucking, and not so much sucking air, you push water right out. You don't have to see. Then you can overheat the engine while it's on a hose. Okay. Some engines you have to cover certain weep holes to keep that water pressure, so it builds up.
What are you covering them with?
Tape. I just take blue tape, just cover it up.
And that's it?
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, put the tape on while it's dry. It's wet.
Ah, of course.
Well, that's common sense. I'm just telling you. So on the Bravos, the Bravos are really the best drives. This Bravo probably could take up to 800 horsepower stock without modifying. You look at all race boats; they all look like Bravos, or just like the TRSs and all those big, just heavy duty. Can take raw power, big gears, heavy duty. Alpha is more like the little bow rider, little cruiser, cabin cruiser. But a heavy big boat, they're gonna either have Bravo 2s and Bravo 3s. Bravo 2s is just it can throw a big pitch diameter and it's just geared up. Bravo 1 is like a couple steps better than the Alpha, because they look the same. I mean, they don't look the same, but they look really similar.
Very similar.
But as far as on the Bravo 2s, it's just, which we have a Bravo 2 out there, which you'll see, and you have, well, this is actually a Bravo 1. The Bravo 2 you have outside, and you have a Bravo 3.
Mine is.
Yeah, your Bravo 3 is right here. So this is the Bravo 3 with dual props. Okay?
Yeah.
This is what it looks like. It's the Bravo 3. So the transmission is up here, and it has the differentials, like I said, the differentials in your car on the bottom. So how would it spin those two props? Do they spin in the same direction or opposite direction? Opposite direction. What controls that?
The differential.
Differential, right? Just like your car. So let's look at one here that I cut open. So on an Alpha and an outboard, the forward and reverse gears in the gear case. On the Bravo, it's in the upper, and here's the transfer case. See, one props. Remember that we watched the gear video? One in the one direction, one in the other. Look at the prop. One's turning one direction, one's turning the opposite. One's suction, one's pushing. Just like your differential in your car. There's no shifting mechanism. It's all up on the top side. On the Alpha, we go to this one here, it's very similar to this. You have a forward gear and a reverse gear, right? And you have your pinion gear. Now, don't mind this, I kind of took a shaft from another motor. I just had to make something here to make it look like that. And you have your shifting mechanism, which is called your clutch dog. So we don't have clutch packs. This is a mechanical clutch. So from the gasoline class, what helps me with the shifting? Think about it. If I want to put it in gear, what helps me with that?
The thing that
Shift
stops it.
interrupt
Right.
switch. I brought one in my shop.
So you just stuck this shaft down in here?
Yeah, but this is not moving.
That's the kind of work you do in your shop?
Yeah, man, that's it. That one's especially for your outboard. So your shift interrupt switch. So when you're in neutral, it's compressed, and when you go to in gear, it uncompresses. Okay. So to start it, is it an open circuit or closed circuit? Closed circuit. So that means when it's in neutral, it's compressed like this. So when you shift it, so this is designed so when you shift quickly. Remember, I told you shift quickly. You're not going to go. Just boom, be done with it. It goes like this. It slows that engine just enough for this clutch log to engage whichever gear you want. Okay? So let me ask you this. On this engine, on this Alpha, how many gears are moving when the engine's in neutral? Both of them?
How many gears
many?
are moving?
3.
3 gears.
Wait.
Which gears?
All 3 of them.
All 3, right?
Driving or driven?
Right.
This.
Because if you now go back to this motor here with his outboard, and I'm gonna go back and forth because it's similar to the outboard. Here's your power head. So this is basically an engine like stripped all the metal away so you can see the inside. The drive shaft is into the what?
Drive shaft is into the flex plate.
This is crankcase
it's crankcase.
on the crankshaft, right? So when the engine's running, we agree the crankshaft's moving all the time, right?
Look, the drive shaft is always connected with the crankshaft. It's a spline.
So when the engine's running, all three of these gears are working. So then you're like, well, okay, so how you put it forward? I'm gonna show a little video on that as well. So when you shift it, see the clutch dog move? It engages. So the shift interrupts quickly, slows the engine down enough.
Can you repeat, Danny?
See, when you shift it, the clutch dog engages to where it needs to go. So if I took this out, so when you're shifting it, it moves, okay? It's easy, just like this. See how it goes? So if it engages, this thing's lack of oil, spin out. Anyways, that shifts, so it goes into this gear.
That's why we use oil.
So if you look at this gear, observation, if you look at this gear, can anybody give me an idea what's wrong with this gear?
We got a broken tooth.
Where? Okay. That's one. What else? You're right. That's good. I didn't even notice there was a fucking key.
Doesn't have enough oil.
Look at it. Pass it around. And don't say anything until you guys all looked at it. Think about where the clutch engages.
It's on the clutch dog attached pit.
It's moving here. When this one is
So I'm gonna give you a separate clutch dog here, and look how it works. Put it next to it and tell me what you see. What's wrong with the clutch? Why is that engaged?